It's not about where you are in life that matters most. It's about where you're going in life that matters most. According to numerous surveys, 7 out of 10 households do not currently have a written household budget. In other words, when it comes to money, 7 out of 10 Americans do not know where they're going. So, what is a budget anyway? A budget is simply a plan to lead you to your preferred financial future. A budget gives you control over your finances rather than your finances or lack of finances controlling you. On today's program, we sit down with Jacolvy Garcia, the education manager for Atlanta Habitat for Humanity. Jacolvy has helped dozens of our neighbors realize the American dream of homeownership through sound financial advice, wise counsel, and yes, helping them create a written household budget. Today, we get back to the basics to help you and your customers create a plan to achieve financial success. This is Budget Essentials. Jacolvy Garcia, welcome to Personal and Professional Best.
Thank you for having me.
Listen, we invited you here today to talk about one of the great challenges in our country, money.
Yeah.
More specifically, we invited you to help us all get a game plan to manage our money. The impact of not having a game plan has devastating impacts in relationship and also in health. Indeed, 4 out of 10 of the marriages in America end, and the number one reason they end is because of money. And then past that, heart disease, depression, not sleeping well, migraine headaches, all things we all want to avoid, right? Well, they source back, many of them, back to the stress that money or lack of money management actually brings. So, and most believe that the problem is that they just don't make enough money. And we think, and statistics are kind of telling us it's true, that the biggest issue is that people simply don't have a game plan to manage their money. So
Correct.
That's why we brought you here today.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so
I appreciate being here.
yeah, we're going to get to work, and that's what you do for a living, which is to counsel people on this particular issue. So let's get started. Jacolvy, what's the real problem that exists with regards to money and people?
Ooh, that's a big question, and I like to start off with that. So I think the big problem first is it's not taught. I think it's private. And that's an issue because first you have some people who think they're the masters of budgeting, right? And we'll probably talk about it later. But sometimes when you compare those to others, they may not necessarily be the masters just yet, right? And I think also a problem of it being kept secret is people don't know where to start. People don't know, okay, is saving $50, is that good for me? Is that even worth writing down or tracking? Is it even something that I should bring up? And is that something I should mention to my spouse, to my significant other, whoever it is? And I think that is one of the problems that we're having right now is that it's not being brought up and it's being kept secret.
You know, what you said, it's not being taught. So, it's been a while for me since I've been in school, right?
Yeah.
But even today, when you go through school, you learn English and science and math, but we don't really spend time on relationships, how to be great in relationships, which is really important. And we don't spend time on how to think about money and how to manage our money that we have. So that's what we're going to try to address a little bit today, give our audience some insights about some changes they can make. And we tell people on the program all the time that it doesn't matter where you are. It matters where you're going in life. You can make any changes in life that are necessary. Interesting when you said that about we don't get taught. My dad was a career banker. Best father on the planet. And he never taught me and or my 2 brothers how to have a budget, how to create a budget, how to manage to a budget. He told us things, cliches like, hey, you need to really know the value of a dollar and you need to work hard for your money. But a lot of people work hard for their money and then they waste their money.
So, and on top of that, a lot of time has changed, right? Back before, we've had interest rates that are going up. We have mortgages that are going up, and wages are staying predominantly the same, right? And so it has begun. The same information cannot be taught generation to generation sometimes, because we have so many things that are happening. We had a generation before the internet, right? That was finding jobs, by using a totally different method than my generation's using to find jobs, and that the next generation's going to use to find jobs. And so some of those things can't even carry over if it is taught. And I think that's a big important thing to recognize as well.
So let's get down to business. 73% of American households say they don't really follow a family budget.
Right.
But I've got a really simple question.
Right.
What is a budget?
Right.
When you think about it,
yes.
Because using the term, I think everybody understands the term.
Yes.
But how do you kind of think about what is really a family budget?
Yeah. I think first, a budget has to be written down, right? So many of us say, oh, we have a budget in our head. And when it's in your head, guess what? You're going to forget about it because you're going to have other things come up. And then also, you're not held accountable, right? You can say, oh, I budgeted for that. And then you say, okay, I had $100 budgeted for gas and you spent $200, right? And then you're like, actually, I can adjust that. Nobody's paying attention to that. I'll adjust that. Okay, now it's $200. Oh, yeah, I'm within my budget. Yeah, of course I'm in my budget. So I think first you have to have a written budget. That is the essential thing. So that way you can be held accountable. And you have to track your spending. So that includes not only the main things such as rent or mortgage, but that also your utilities. Also will be your fund money. That includes if you decide to go to a restaurant, go out to eat. That includes grocery store. That includes clothing for kids, any type of upkeep such as nail care, hair care, whatever. All of that needs to be tracked. And you can vary a budget. It of course is different from person to person. But the most important thing is you have to stick to it. You can't just create the budget and then say, okay, it's done, and then throw it away, right? So it is important that you always follow your budget and always make changes as necessary.
So we talked earlier just in when we opened that 4 out of 10 relationships, marital relationships, wind up ending. It doesn't tell you how many marital relationships that stay together are under stress because of this. And people kind of grew up dealing with money their own way.
Right.
Then they wind up in a relationship and absent a family budget in writing.
Right.
People just do what they do, it seems.
Yeah.
And then that's part of the reason that the tension exists relationally, because you did this, I did that. And so getting a budget, getting it in writing and actually tracking it. I want to give my dad credit now, who we call here the source. So once a month, my dad sends me his family budget, which is for him and my mom.
Right.
And this is what it looks like.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh. And look at how many categories it has, right? It's not just, I see church on there. It's not just, tithe. It goes through all things related to that.
I mean, listen, it is the taxes, annual taxes, because he doesn't have them in escrow. It's ATT mobility.
Exactly.
It's plumbing repair. I mean, and it is a actual and then the budget and the variance.
Yeah.
And then, because he's like a poster child for us, right? And then he gives me a write-up to tell me the reasons why things happen the way they did. And he told me that he and my mom spend maybe an hour a month doing this because they're in a groove doing it now. And that the amount of peace that's in his family, at this stage, because he's not working anymore. He's on a fixed income, and he needs to make sure. But I think we all would do well to follow the source.
Yeah, and it's tough because keep in mind that people have different approaches to money and different experiences with money. Somebody that has $50 in their bank account, they may say, oh, I have no money in my bank account. They really do. However, their experience, they say $50 is not enough to even count as anything, right? Whereas somebody with $50 may say, oh, I have enough to do whatever, right? And so those different experiences, they all relate. And then as you mentioned, when it comes to a successful relationship, you have people viewing money 2 different ways. And so to find that common ground is going to be important in a conversation that anybody that is getting serious with their partner, they should have that conversation. What does money mean to you? What are some experiences you had with money? How do you talk about money? And then what are some things you would like to improve in your relationship with money? Right?
And you Chardonnay shop.
Exactly. What brand? Do you use coupons? Do you online shop? How often do you do that? Do you save? How much do you have in savings? What do you think is enough to save? Right?
Well, we're inundated as well with advertisements,
Right.
particularly in the world we live in today with social and otherwise.
Yep.
And we didn't plan to buy something,
Right.
but then we buy something. And the best example of that is if you walk through a grocery store,
Yep.
When you get to check out, there's a lot of things that are being marketed to you while you check out that you had no plan to buy.
Right. Sodas, candies, magazines, all of that.
But they're there for a reason,
Yeah.
just to actually attract you to go buy something that
Right.
maybe isn't in your budget, right? And spend more money. And then people wonder where their actual money went. So how do you, if we're talking to our audience today and they don't have a budget in writing, how do you build a family budget?
Yeah. I think first is you have to start simple. And before you even start, you have to have yourself agree on being able to make errors. So, for example, if you budgeted $30 for eating out and you spent $60, at that point, you don't just throw everything out, right? It is okay. A budget is a lifelong journey. It is something that you have to practice. And it is something that as you learn more about yourself and as you begin to learn more about the other people in the family, that is something that you will constantly make adjustments on. So to start off, you first going to have to think, what can I realistically do? I had somebody I was working with, for example, who spent $300 a week on eating out. And when I first started working with her, I asked her, how did she feel about that number? She said, oh, I'm so embarrassed. I want to get that number down. I really want to be able to fix that and save some money. And so I said, okay, well, what changes can we make? She said, oh, I won't spend any on eating out. I said, no, we're not going to do that, right? That's not going to work, right?
Not going to work.
That's not going to work. And
Go for that every week.
Exactly. I asked her, I said, why do you think I said no to that? And she said, because I'm not going to do it. I said, yes, because you're not going to do it. Because we got to be realistic with ourselves. We are people. We got to see ourselves as people as a whole. We have different foibles that we have to work on. And so we can't beat ourselves up over making errors, right? So all that is to say, make sure that you're okay with making errors and to adjust for that. And so then when you start creating your budget, write down everything you can think of that you spent money on, right? That's going to be your basis. That's going to be where you start off, right? So again, you're going to put your rent, you're going to put your utilities, you're going to put things that you spent fund money on, you're going to put any money you put in savings, and you're going to label all of those things and put those in different categories, right? That is your basis. You're going to look at that and start analyzing. That's when you're going to start taking the process and say, okay, why did I spend $200 on eating out when I had food at home during the time, right?
Then I threw out.
Exactly, right? Yeah, the food has gone bad.
Right, the food's gone bad, but I decided to eat out.
I'm eating out, exactly. And so at that point in time, after you analyze it, you then create a game plan for the future. Okay, by next month, I am only going to spend $100 on eating out. I'm going to spend $50 on eating out. And I'm going to create a plan that makes sense of, if I have food in the fridge, I'm going to eat that before I go eat out, for example, right? Because I don't want any food to go bad, because that's wasting money for me. And then also knowing that eating out costs more money, then I'm going to try and eat out less, right?
So one of the things that is interesting, we are obviously in the business of lending money.
Yeah.
So we talk to people, interview them about where they work, how much money they make.
Yep.
And if we asked our customers, how much do you take home?
Right.
Like you make X,
Yep.
and how much do you take home after taxes, everything else? It's fascinating how seldom people actually know the number. So the budget process is, hey, we've got to really get very, very comfortable with knowing exactly how much money we take home.
Right. Right.
So that we don't have a tax liability coming up at the end of the year that we don't have planned.
Yeah.
And then we've got to document every single dollar we spent, is what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then just manage it like we do the rest of our life, which is after a period of month, we review it and we make some adjustments to it. And maybe then we eat the food that's in the refrigerator before it actually goes bad.
Exactly. And it is a stepping stone, as you mentioned. So you can't borrow money, or you shouldn't borrow money until you learn how to save money, right? You shouldn't learn how to spend money until you learn how to earn money, right? And you have to go through the steps. Earn money, then you will be able to learn how to spend money, because then you have something to spend. Then after learning how to spend, you learn how to save. And then after that, then you start getting to the advanced things such as borrowing. And I think so many times people who are ready to jump straight into, for example, clients that I've worked with, they want to talk about investing, right? They want to talk about, how can I buy property and flip property? How can I get into the stock market? And then ask them, well, how much do you have in your savings account? Okay, well, I have $50, right? It's like, okay, well, you can't even, if you can't save, how are you supposed to have anything to even invest, right?
Yep.
It takes time, and you can't just skip steps.
You said stepping stones, so it's just one step at a time to get from where you are today, which maybe you don't have a budget, to get a budget, and then to really train yourself to learn after each period, after each month, to be able to understand the things that you didn't know. And there's always those unexpected expenses that wind up taking up. So you meet and talk with people all the time who you've got to get prepared to be homeowners, right? And our customers, 35% of them, it's the first time they'll own a home.
Right.
And what an amazing club to be able to join because of what it does long-term wealth-wise for folks. But when you meet with folks, what are like some of the obvious common opportunities that you see for all of them to save money so that hopefully today, the folks that are actually watching, they can walk away today and say, God knows it's so simple, but what are those?
Right. First, take a step back and realize every dollar counts, right? I think a lot of times that, and I know this has happened to me personally, that sometimes I'll look at it and say, oh, it's $5. It's whatever, right? And I say that to say is because we have subscription services, right? That we're all subscribed to that we may not use anymore, or we don't necessarily need. You know, I have clients with multiple subscription services. I said, how do you watch this much TV, right? You have 5 different TV services. Who has that much time in the day? And you're telling me that you work a full-time job and you have kids.
You don't have that much time.
Yeah, exactly. I said, do you need all of these, right? And then, so every dollar counts. So if you notice a discrepancy, such as in your bills, right? Take care of it, address it. Realize that we have 12 months, right? Usually bills we're paying every month. Those things add up. $5 a month increase, that's what, $60
Yeah,
that's $60. And also if you with your paycheck, with your pay stubs, you have 24 pay stubs or 26 pay stubs, depending on if you're paid bi-weekly or twice a month. And those can vary, but realize that changes in your pay stubs impact times 24 times 26, right?
Yep.
And so you want to pay attention to those kind of things and notice those discrepancies first off. And so anybody that is trying to get into home ownership, you want to make sure that you are taking the time to budget, and that means cutting out those subscriptions like I mentioned, but also that you're trying to cut out any excess fat. And when I say excess fat, I mean you order 2 meals at a restaurant every time you go out, and that's one here and then one for later, right? Because that's spending extra money.
Yep.
It could mean saving money by cutting out on a drink. I don't know if you've noticed, but I know I went to a restaurant recently, and it's me and my wife, and we bought 2 burgers, 2 fries, 2 drinks, right? We spent about $25 for those 2 burgers, 2 fries, 2 drinks. I was blown away by how much we had to spend for something that I remember, you can feed 2 people under $10.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So notice the change that has happened around you. We have changes. We had inflation that has gone up.
Yep.
Groceries cost more. That is true. Now, restaurants have started adding different services, different charges, where they, for example, during COVID, some of them had a service fee that was attached. If you're doing Instacart, if you're doing any type of delivery services, realize you're paying for gas, you're paying for tip, you're paying for a handling charge, service fees, all of that are added onto that bill.
So you're not against subscriptions and you're not against Instacart.
Right.
And I'm not against Starbucks.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. But, I'm fascinated when I go through the airport that there's a mile-long line in Starbucks to spend $8 for a cup of coffee.
Right.
And in a lot of ways, people, to your point earlier, $5, doesn't seem like a big deal.
Right.
But every time we're making these decisions and we're making lots of these decisions, at the end of the month, we might be talking $200-$300 worth of just inefficiency.
Yes, exactly. And that's where it stacks up. And I think that is a trap that if you're not having a budget, those little items add up over time.
You don't even realize it. And, what I know, which is people are shocked once they start writing down all the dollars that they're actually spending. I mentioned Chardonnay shopping. It became a thing because it's a thing.
Right.
So people have no idea they're going to buy this stuff. And then maybe a little bit in the evening, they're watching TV. They can only use one subscription, but they have multiple that they're paying for. They're having a glass of Chardonnay, and the next thing you know, they're buying something they had no idea they were going to buy, spending money that's not a part of their budget.
Right.
So tell us a story of like one, person that you are reminded of that made mad transformation with your financial life. And what it did for it.
Yeah. So I'll go back to the person I mentioned earlier, the person I was spending $300 on eating out. And so I worked with her over a couple months, and she was very receptive. And she at first was very worried. She's like, I don't know if I'll be able to save money on eating out. She said, it's going to be tough, and we were able to look at her budget, and we found some other things that we could cut. For example, we were able to reduce her internet bill because I said, are you using internet like this? Like, you're paying this top tier premium thing. And she has kids in the house. And I said, are they using the internet like this? She was like, oh, I don't think so. So we're able to cut down her bill. And then also we were able to wean down eating out at the restaurant. At the last meeting I had with her, she spent $90 a week on eating out, which is amazing if you compare to that $300.
Yeah.
And so that money now is going towards purchasing a car for one of her kids, the oldest one. And she is so excited and she's so happy. And also the child is excited as well. And she said, thank you for this, because I was so worried about this, how to achieve this goal for my child. And so having something like that goal not only means closer bond with the child, but that also means an employment opportunity for that child. It could be entrepreneurship for that child. It could be being able to help a friend or family member because now they have that vehicle, right? It's also an opportunity to learn how to budget themselves, because eventually that car will be turned over to that child, and now they get to learn about, how do I budget for gas? How do I budget for car maintenance?
Right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so all of that is opportunities that could not have happened unless she took that time to analyze her budget, make the corrections, and then ultimately decide what was her goal.
So relationships that we have, the most important part of our life, are impacted by the choices or not choices we make in our money management life. Our health is impacted by it. So there's every reason in the world to stop now if you don't really have a written budget, and get one, and not worry about being embarrassed about where you are if you're in not such a good place, but just realize that your relationships are going to get much better and much richer, and you're going to be in better health by doing this.
Yeah.
So,
can I add on something to that too?
Please.
So also that relationship, keep in mind that's with a mother and child, but also remember the relationships you have with friends and family members as well in relation to money. right? If you borrow money, if I were to give you money right now, right? And then I saw you and I say, okay, you got to pay me back by X amount of time. And then I saw you on social media.
On a cruise.
Yeah. You're like, oh, I'm loving this cruise. I just bought a new outfit. I just got a new car or whatever. And I see that. How does that make me feel realizing, Pat didn't even mention anything about paying me back recently.
Right.
Anytime I'm trying to call him, you're dodging my calls, or anytime I start trying to bring it up, you instantly start kind of avoiding me. And keep in mind that we can possibly lose relationships due to money. And we don't ever want to say, you know what, I became estranged from my sister, from my best friend, from my aunt or whoever because of some money, right? Of all things in the world, that is not how you want to lose somebody that you've known for years. And I'm talking about these close connections, right?
Yep.
Because I assume that's usually the people we lend to, is people that we were close to, people that we grew up with.
Yeah.
You don't want to lose that relationship, and then you start attaching bad and negative emotions to that person. You say, well, all right, Pat didn't pay me back, and now he's kind of arrogant because now he's wearing this new suit and he didn't even pay me back, and you're maybe talking to other family members and causing all these different types of hiccups, when if you just had your money straight the first time, right, there would be no issues in that relationship.
We got to get this money thing right.
Oh,
man.
No, when you start taking off the favor.
Yeah, when you think about the consequences of what you were just describing, it's not only, your marriage, significant others.
Yeah.
It's your kids don't get as much from you in terms of your best self relationship because you're so stressed about money.
Exactly.
Your customers.
Yeah.
So if you're in a business like ours, which is a relationship business, you're dragging with you this stress, and you're also not so healthy. So we got to get this thing right.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So the average American today has around $6,000 of credit card. And you mentioned inflation.
Yeah.
We're in a business where interest rates have gone up materially. So if you didn't have any more debt, credit card wise, today than you did a year ago, it's costing you a lot more to carry the debt.
Yeah.
The average American has $20,000 of automobile debt, $38,000 of student loan, and $220,000 of mortgage. This is just the averages.
Yeah.
How do you work with your customers if they're in a place today carrying the average amount of debt, which is too much? How do you work with them and talk to them about how to begin to work to retire?
Yeah. So first you have to find your why, right? You have to be able to say, you have to make it tangible, because if you don't make it tangible, you are not going to follow it, right? You have to say, okay, do I want to work when I'm 90? Do I want to work when I'm 85 and I know I already have a bad hip by then?
Do I want to stay married? Do I want to migrate headache?
Exactly. And so it is important that you first make it tangible. And then you want to start being able to squirrel away money where you can. Like I said, every dollar matters. You want to create multiple types of accounts. So you want to create a short-term goal, a long-term goal. You want to have something for emergencies, and routine items. And for all of that, those are the goals to be able to start saving money and achieve retirement. Because if you are not taking care of your house and yourself and your budget, then you will not be properly equipped when it comes to that time where you lose half your income and your own Social Security, where you haven't saved properly. So now you have to work with savings you would have 10 years later after using some of that money. You have to work with that now.
Yep.
And you have to adjust your budget. And then also, I think we can all agree that, at that age, I don't think you want to do the mental math of, okay, now I got to learn how to make a budget. That is not the time, right? You wanted to have it as easy as possible where it's almost a reflex, right? That you see it and you're like, okay, I know what I've spent like this. Make it easier for yourself in the future, right? And that is how I usually see retiring for myself is I'm saying, okay, I'm maybe giving up some money now, but I'm paying myself 10 times.
So you're just making choices in the short run to sacrifice some things that you might want to do or might want to have, but you know that in the long run, that's going to give you a lot more peace.
Yes.
Because you'll have more cushion in the short run, and in the long run, you'll have more choices that you get to make about how long you have to work and all those kind of good things.
And going back with talking about some of the strain that it can put on relationships, if you aren't properly equipped for retirement and you're depending on your kids or you're depending on other family members to take care of you, that is a strain that you can possibly put on them.
Yep. So talk about, it's not winter season, it's summer season.
Correct.
Talk about the snowball.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then and the avalanche that could actually take place. And specific to how do we retire debt?
Yes. Yes. So as far as retiring debt, so you have those two methods. So you have the snowball method, you have the avalanche method, right? And so snowball method, you're looking at the lowest balances on all your debt, credit cards, car loan, what have you.
Whatever's the lowest.
Yes. Yep. And you're going to go from the lowest, pay all of that off, and then move on to the next one. The term is coined as a snowball. You have a small little snowball, you start rolling it, it gets bigger and bigger. So you start adding the balances from that smallest debt. Maybe it was $25 you were paying in a credit card. When you paid off that credit card, not only do you have the extra money you were already putting on it, but you also have that additional $25. And that goes towards the next debt. So that is the method I would recommend if you're new to budgeting, if you're new to trying to do finances. I think that is the easiest because it gives you momentum. That lets you move the quickest. But then we also have the avalanche method. Avalanche method is where you're looking at interest rates and you're trying to pick the highest interest rate and bring it down as low as possible by paying it off. And so with that, if you have a credit card that may be at a 20% interest rate and you have another credit card that's at 18%, you're going to pay off the 20% interest rate first to try and save money as much as possible down the future. Now, there are trade-offs to both. Like I mentioned, I think Snowball I recommend because that is the easiest and to get on board with because it gives you a lot of quick victories and you can see it really start to add up as you go throughout budgeting. But with the avalanche method, sometimes you're able to save a lot more money down the road because you're working on those highest interest rates. And so that way you're saving as much money as you could down the road. I personally use a combination of both. So sometimes I'm using the Snowball, sometimes I'm using the avalanche. And it's more comparing the lowest balances compared to the interest rates and figuring out what makes sense as far as paying off and then moving forward to save me the most money down the road.
So if people that are in the audience today eat out less, make sure before everything goes bad in the fridge, right?
Yeah.
That we take care of eating all that.
Yeah.
If we cut some subscriptions, maybe change our internet service, and then we stopped going to Starbucks.
You're right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And I'm not against Starbucks. Don't use Instacart.
Right.
We're going to free up some money. We can start the Snowball immediately and start retiring the $6,000 of average credit card debt that we have out there, which, by the way, is costing us everybody a lot more today because we have interest rates substantially higher, 5 points higher than they were just a year ago. So we got to get to work to do that.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that I remind our audience today that we have a program here at Supreme called Credit Essentials every Friday at 1 p.m. You can go to supremebest.com and get additional information. But every Friday, 1 p.m., we run a program called Credit Essentials where Lisa Myers, who is the credit whisperer, she tells you not what your credit score is, but why your credit score is what your credit score is. And why is that important? Because if you know why it is, you can change some behaviors. And if you'll use the Snowball and or Avalanche, both bringing your debt down and bringing the cost of your credit down, which is directly associated with your credit score. So we're giving you a great opportunity today to get advice from Jacolvy. And we're also telling you, come to Credit Essentials on Friday, 1 o'clock, and you'll learn about your credit score and how to get it down so your cost of credit cards, automobile, and mortgages will all go down as well. Let's talk about Habitat.
Yeah.
I've been involved now for, I guess about 20 years. And to the extent that we have now built 14 homes as Supreme, and total, I've been involved with 43 builds.
Wow.
It's one of the most fabulous places, community service ever, because it doesn't give people houses, it gives people homes, but it gives them also your coaching and expertise to get them ready to own the home. Tell us about what applicants have to do at Habitat in the process to be able to get a home. What do you do for it?
Yeah. So Habitat, they will not set you up for failure, right? If you qualify for the mortgage, that means you were in a spot, you've shown the financial discipline to be able to afford that home. However, of course, if you change that behavior, same thing happens, right? We have to make sure that we are not putting you in a bad position where you have to foreclose on your home or you're stuck trying to be able to afford a home and you can't actually afford it. So the first thing is, again, we are looking at finances. We are looking at how much money you earn. We're looking at your debt. We're looking at that responsibility.
So we're creating a budget.
We're creating a budget, right? Right. And we're creating a budget.
A real budget.
And that includes savings, because savings is important. One of the things that we don't look at, however, is, at least specific to Atlanta Habitat, we don't look at credit score.
Okay.
And so we do that just because we don't want anybody that has been taking the time to really try and fix their credit and try and get a home. We don't want them to be jeopardized. Yes, disqualified, because they took that time to actually try and work. And so you have to first make that budget. You have to earn enough, and you have to create a savings. And we have to be able to see that, right? It has to be a paper trail attached to it.
So is there like a monthly meeting they have to have with you?
Yes.
To go over to make sure that their family budget and their earnings and everything else, that they stay on course. So
Right.
you're kind of you're that voice on the other end, that accountability voice that says, hey, we have a plan, stay on plan.
Yeah, so we, at application, we look at that income savings credit. But then after being accepted into the program, we also have what's called financial coaching. So either they'll meet with me or they'll meet with one of our trained financial coach volunteers, and they walk them through goal setting, budgeting, debt management, increasing savings. And for anybody that is disqualified, they're also offered the opportunity to participate in the Atlanta Habitat My Money, My Future program. And with Atlanta Habitat's My Money, My Future program, that is where we're trying to get pre-purchase education for anybody that needs to pay off debt because they got disqualified, how to increase their income if they were disqualified on that, or increase their savings. Those, they work with a staff member over the course of a year to be able to get their income and credit on the right track, to be able to not only purchase a home with Atlanta Habitat, but also purchase a home anywhere.
Yeah. Which is an amazing thing, because what we know is true is that when you look at the average wealth of a family over a long period of time, becoming a part of the club, the homeownership club,
Right.
dramatically impacts wealth building in our country, right? And really anybody who gets up and goes to work every single day, for the most part, can ultimately get to a place where they can get a family budget, discipline themselves.
Yeah.
If they really want something bad enough, a home, they can get there. You guys do an amazing job, by the way, because not only do you get them prepared to get the home, but you get them prepared to keep it afterwards.
Yeah.
Talk about the part of the budget that most people don't talk about, which is I bought the home. There was a recent survey done that the biggest regret a year later for people that have never owned a home was they didn't know how much it was actually going to cost to own them. They thought the mortgage payment was the end of it. Talk to us about maintenance costs and how you help them plan for that.
Yes. So as far as maintenance, so of course there's seasonal maintenance, right? And you have your annual maintenance. All that is going to vary from home to home, depending on where it is in location, what the weather is, how the home was built. So for example, pressure washing, you will do that more often with a brick home versus, for example, a wood home, right? And so with that, you want to first realize what type of home you're working with, right? And then you want to do that research, because it's going to be specific to that home and specific to that region where, for example, just as an example, in California, let's say, right? There may be a certain type of insect that are more predominantly invading that house or that type of material, right? Versus here in Atlanta. So you want to do the research and first figure out what do I need to do for this house in this area, right? And then there are some common things that you can do for the home, such as HVAC. You will always check in and drain the water for the HVAC You would change the air filters. You would do routine maintenance. And a lot of that maintenance comes down to really just looking around, right? If you see a crack in the drywall, where's that crack coming from? You want to figure that out now while it's only costing $10, $50,
as opposed to waiting for the problem to grow.
Exactly. Before it starts costing you a couple hundred to a couple $1,000s, right? And possibly leading to the worst things. But then also you want to make sure that you're doing the maintenance of your lawn, right? And figuring out what is taken care if you have, for example, HOA, right? Who is taking care of this? Because then that's going to factor into your budget. If you're paying an HOA and they're not doing the lawn care, okay, well, you got to factor that in.
Got it.
Now you got to pay this amount for your lawn maintenance plus HOA.
And if you've lived in an apartment, you just don't have the experience to understand those other costs. And I think
and
one
the time.
And the time. One of the things that I love about what you all do is you get them fully educated on understanding the homeownership process post transaction. So, because as we both know, HVAC life expectancy is like 10 years, right? Roofs are 15, maybe 20. So if you're buying a home today, you're in the audience and you're buying a home and it's 7, 8, 9 years old, your life expectancy on HVAC is right around the corner. And those are $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. So to the extent that getting the maintenance budget in place is a really important idea. You strongly recommend that at Habitat, I know.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So again, it's pressure washing, staining. You want to check your roof for any types of tile damage, roofing damage. You also want to make sure you're doing the same thing for your other assets, such as your car, right? If you notice a chip or something in your car or in the tires or whatever, you want to address that now before it starts growing.
So you deal with all the time, Jacolvy. You deal with people and you're talking about arguably one of the most sensitive things. And one of the things that in our country is really affecting in a not so good way a lot of people money. If someone's in the audience today and you were just giving them one piece of advice, this was your best friend, this was your, somebody you really cared for, what's the one piece of advice that you would give them?
I think it's all on scale. Scale is important. Whether you have $10,000, whether you have $100, whether you have $10, right? All of it is going to depend on scale and scaling it up to what you need it to do for your goals. So every dollar matters, as we mentioned earlier, but you want to make sure that you give a place for your dollar, and you want to make sure that you count that dollar in towards your goals. A lot of people, I believe, a lot of people, they see that money and they don't think it matters. They don't think that $10 matters until it adds up. And the way that it adds up, we already talked about how eating out and how having subscription services, they can add up. You can do the same thing with your savings. You can do the same thing with meeting your goal. It adds up. Those $5 here, $10 here, eventually you have a couple hundred, right? If you keep doing that. And so it is okay to start small, and especially if you're new to budgeting and finances, that you probably will start small, and that is okay. And I think as long as you realize, I just got to scale this up. I apply the same technique, scale it up.
Scale.
And that is where you need to start.
So it always comes back to the same place, which is we got to start with a budget because we got to know where our money is going.
Right.
We got to know how much we're taking in and where it's going. And then we can make choices. We have essentials we have to pay for, food and shelter, et cetera. And then we have choices about other things that we don't even know if we don't have a budget. We don't even know how much money we're actually doing. And imagine that's 200, 300, 400 scale, right? A month. And it goes into your bank account as opposed to not. Every month when your bank statement comes to your house or when you go online and look at it, you're going to be a lot happier and a lot more peaceful. And right after you look at it, you're probably going to do a lot better in relationship with the people in your life.
Exactly.
And your health's going to be better because you're going to be like, God, I feel good.
And it improves so many different things. Your self-image, like you said, your relationship. We have so many things that can develop from having a negative experience with money. You have stress. You have the strain on other relationships. And I think being able to understand that you can have the reverse of that if you take care of your money properly, where you have a positive self-image, you like yourself, you can afford, if you have an emergency, you're not stressed out about it, right? That is some of the things that are afforded to you when you're able to save money and when you're able to budget.
You know, very few, even though we're the wealthiest nation on the planet, very few Americans give money away to those that are in need.
Yep.
I had a sermon my pastor gave years ago where he said that you have to flip upside down the way people deal with money.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that most people spend and then they don't have enough to save and they don't have enough to give away.
Right.
They might want to have savings and want to give away money, but they just simply don't. And he said if we would give money away first, save second,
right,
and then spend what we have left over, which it all goes back to the same thing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You got to have a budget so we know where we own, so we can make the choices we make.
And I think a lot of times people try and overcomplicate it, right? At the end of the day, you're tracking your expenses. You want to have more money coming in than you have going out, right?
Yep.
That is where you need to be at the end of the day. And that, again, that's where we go on with scale, right? You will do that same thing no matter what you're earning.
And we want to spread that margin. We want to get more margin.
Right. Yeah.
We want the money that's coming in, fewer dollars going in.
Exactly. As our income goes up, we don't want the spending to come up with us.
Yeah. The margin, as it gets bigger, your blood pressure level goes down, your stress level goes down, and your relationships get better. Jacolvy, thank you so much for what you do for Habitat for Humanity. Thank you for what you do for the people that are going through this process, because you'll be that coach, that person, that voice in their life for the rest of their lives, because they'll get this part right, and they'll live healthier lives, and they'll have better relationships. Thank you for your service in our community, and thank you for being on Personal Professional Best today.
Thank you for having me.
Yep.